the T-boy at the presidency. But I thought in my respectful view, and I've said this before, that Article 140 of the Constitution is the biggest problem, because it was intended to create a scenario in which any person ascending to the office of the president would have to look for votes across the country. It did not anticipate a situation in which you got one strong person who teams up with another one strong person, and together they form the presidency. Because in the other thinking, it would have been expected that the deputy president would have lived in the shadow of the president. He would have been an assistant to the president. So the deputy president would only be waiting to deputize the president, to do only those assignments that are assigned to him. Yes. You're seeing a different deputy president who has decided what his role is. And from public speak, it would appear the president and the deputy president do not necessarily agree entirely on what the role of the deputy president would be.
All right. Just before we continue, breaking news right there, a developing story that we were talking about earlier is that Safaricom has appointed former CEO, that's Michael Joseph, as the interim CEO of the company. This is following the demise of Bob Collymore, who has been at the helm of the company for some 9 years. He died yesterday of cancer. And those are pictures of Michael Joseph, the first man to lead that company, the company that has actually become one of the most profitable in the country, and at least in the whole of the continent to a large extent, if you think about it, or the region, I should say. So Michael Joseph taking over in the interim, at least until the board then makes an appointment in the coming days, according to the statement that they have sent us. All right? Let's come back to our discussion. He says something very important, that the president had 3 pillars that he wanted to focus on. The first one, of course, was uniting the country, and he did that perfectly to a certain degree by bringing in Raila Odinga, the opposition leader. They were at odds at some point, but coming together, you have to say that that sort of changed the social fabric of the country in terms of coming together and now charting, a path together. But that, to a certain degree, again, has caused some bit of turbulence within his own government. The executive, the center of power in this country, is now divided. Cabinet secretaries allegedly, keyword, plotting to assassinate the deputy president. How do they sit together, David, in cabinet on Thursday and agree on issues of national concern?
I mean, I don't think we want to dignify jokes, because that's what they are. This whole allegation of wanting to assassinate.
No, but threats on someone's life,
absolutely,
whether
they are not taken for granted. The deputy president, a very serious Kenyan. Yes. But so long as we cannot verify the writer of that letter to DCI, it remains a joke, and we will not dignify it on national platform. I think you can only go so far with politics and PR stunts, and I don't think that we want to spend quality time that should be used to inform Kenyans of great things to dignify that joke.
Okay, that's fine, David. And my question then is this.
Yeah.
My question is this. Be that as it may.
Yeah.
It is affecting the cabinet. They cannot discuss issues of concern.
Because
there's tension.
Yeah. Which I bet was the intention of that whole gimmick. The intention was to try and create a leeway in the cabinet, to try and create frosty relationships within the cabinet, so that then there is suspicion. You go out there, you put a word that has no basis, you accuse some people, and then now you try to make them unable to render their duties in the cabinet. Now, until the DCI gets to the bottom of this, and I hope they do. I saw recently that because of their, the way the deputy president has been dismissive of the DCI, they are even willing to go the extent of asking FBI to investigate. I don't even want them to go there. They must prove themselves qualified and capable by nailing the writers of that letter and throwing them behind bars, and taking them to court and probably being thrown behind bars, because that's forgery. It's a joke with serious things. Assassination is no joke, Nyabola. You must agree with me that the family of Mboya does not take that for a joke. The family of Mushai does not take that for a joke. The family of Musando does not take assassination for a joke. And they have many other people that believe with them that what they see being called an assassination is an insult to their pain and grief, having lost dear ones to assassins. Okay? But that said, Raila Odinga, together with President Uhuru Kenyatta, shook hands. In their shaking hands, they signed a document that had 9 points. Part of those 9 points was inclusivity, which was the basis, the core, at the core and the heart of the Building Bridges initiative was that part of the country felt excluded, that others had gotten all the opportunities while others were lagging behind, that there were areas that were advantaged because of, pre-existing conditions, like the colonialists had probably gone to some areas, put infrastructure, set things rolling, but others were left behind. And in that document, they agreed that we would have an inclusive government. We would try to see if Mamboleo could have a chance and Wanjiko would have an opportunity. And, even the Dorobo and the Njep could be included in government in its running, in the appointive roles as well as other duties. They also said that they would fight corruption vehemently. And that then informs how we have, we got to a point where the fight against corruption became a major thing, almost outdoing the president's two other major agendas, which were the Big Four and Building Bridges initiative. You would expect that as you forge a way forward to try and unite the country, there are people who operate in disorganization and disunity. They are able only to rise so long as the country cannot rally together for a good cause. Some of these people have decided that it is not fair for the country to be united. Woe unto them. We all need to agree that to fix the nation, we needed a semblance of unity or some peace. The country was so fragmented that I do not think business would possibly be done. One may cry that the business is not, the economy hasn't gotten to the point we needed it to be. But I want to put it here to you. As a public policy person, as a person who studies how our policies work and how they affect the public, that were it not for this handshake, were it not for the rallying of the political class to try and forge unity in the nation and push the country forward, the situation right now would be dire, even worse. And so the dissenting voices, that's why I started by saying this is a call for people to put country ahead of self, that the country deserves much more. And our political leaders must know that the unity of this country must not only be for the sake of a country. I hear them say that, you see, the handshake was so that, dynasties would be entrenched even more. And I laugh. Because this belief that any good thing that happens in the political scene must have some shrewd thinking behind it or some hidden agenda, and that we cannot be able to just seize fire for the sake of fire. It is misinformed and it is appalling. And so I hope that we take seriously the war against corruption, because when one undermines the war against graft, you are essentially saying, as I heard the deputy president saying, unfortunately, that corruption cannot stop you from running a country. In national television, being interviewed, he said that, what are you telling people? That corruption is something that we are innately born with, we are unable to fix it, and we have to live with it when it is fact that 30% of Kenya's budget is pilfered through corruption, that 600 billion Kenya shillings is lost to graft, and that we are unable to reduce that from 600 billion to 100 billion. Then you want to lead that country? Is it even fair for this nation? Absolutely not. So all of us must rally behind the fight against corruption, and it cannot be won unless we have a unity of purpose that calls the person from Lamu and the person from Pokot and tells them that this is for the sake of country. That's it.
All right. The figure is actually 800 billion, according to the U.S. ambassador, Kyle Bakata.
Tragic.
But James, do we dissolve cabinet? There have been calls for that over the weekend, this past weekend, that we had, political noises from all over the country talking about dissolution of cabinet, at least because there's so much tension there that it's going to be difficult for them to open.
Every time there is noise and tension, we cannot be dissolving cabinet. Because there's always going to be that kind of tension. But let me tell you something about what my colleague has been talking about. As an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, I am only trained to take as serious something that is presented as good evidence, something that has probative value, from which we can deduct something meaningful. Now, I want to be extremely generous to everyone, and I want to say this. I want to be very generous to the Deputy President because there is nothing yet that shows that he authored the letter, okay? But at the same time, I also want to be extremely generous to the people who are alleged to be plotting to kill him or to assassinate him because there is nothing that shows that they also actually wrote the letter. Now, let me tell you some background. This country has the Director of Criminal Investigations, backed with a team of people who are supposed to investigate crimes. An assassination attempt against the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya or whoever other person is a very serious issue that they take with a lot of concern. However, because of the intrigues of politics of this nation, you do understand that the Director of Criminal Investigations might not even be very comfortable to delve into the issue of investigating an assassination attempt against the Deputy President. Of course, why? Because the Deputy President is on record as having said before that he doesn't believe that these guys there on Kiambu Road are doing a good job. That is the reason why I believe, it's just a hunch, that Kinoti has requested the FBI to come in and deal with this matter so that he removes that element of potential bias. Because if the result of that investigation goes this way or the other, there's a possibility that somebody could politicize it by saying that it means this and not the other. But secondly, and which is what is very important, Kenyans must be told the truth. Sometime early last year, I believe, members of parliament and leaders from the Mount Kenya region met President Uhuru Kenyatta somewhere in Sagana Lodge and told him that we have issues from Mount Kenya region. The fact that you are the President of the Republic of Kenya, and we believe is a good thing, doesn't mean that our region does not have issues that you need to deal with. And now, as a result of that meeting, His Excellency the President appointed the Cabinet Secretary Munya to chair a group of leaders from Mount Kenya region to come up with a framework of trying to resolve the issues around the Mount Kenya region. And I believe the meetings that have been happening at Lamada Hotel were in pursuit of that particular agenda.
But James, let me just stop you for a brief moment. Live pictures from the Lee Funeral Home. You see on your screen right now is, we believe, where the body of Bob Collymore is. This morning, he passed away yesterday. Those are live pictures from the Lee Funeral Home here in Nairobi, where the body of the late Bob Collymore lies. He died yesterday, succumbing to cancer, and should be interred, the remains at least, this morning, later today, in a private ceremony. Those are live pictures from the Lee Funeral Home. We'll keep them there and keep you posted on what happens. In the meantime, Michael Joseph, the former CEO, has been appointed in the interim at least to lead the organization in this period of transition. All right, Bwana Mambule?
Yeah, so I was saying that I believe it is pursuant to that direction that was given by the President to Cabinet Secretary Munya to bring together a caucus of Mount Kenya leaders and try and create a framework for resolving issues that are particular to the Mount Kenya region, and which is perfectly in order because any other person from any other place across the country can also caucus for development in their region. So it is this particular caucus, which I believe has now been branded a plotier for purposes of assassinating the Deputy President. Now, having said that, let me tell you something. I think most of the politicians that you see on the Kenyan landscape are extremely well educated, they are extremely well exposed, and they have many years of serious political experience. So do not see anything that happens on the political scene and think that it is what you see. It is probably a calculated move which cumulatively is going to lead us to some place. Now, the most important thing that you must understand is that if I were in the Ruto camp today, I would learn one lesson, that Raila Odinga became such a thorn in the flesh of the president that he probably sat down and said, why don't I bring this brother of mine onto the table so that we can have a discussion on how to move the country forward together? Is it possible that the handlers of the deputy president have learned from that lesson and they are saying, let us create such disunity, let us create such tension, such noise,
that they can't ignore us,
so that these fellows can no longer ignore us. And I believe that is exactly what this guy is doing.
All right.
And they are backed, and this time round, they are backed with an advantage, that they are actually, they actually hold the position of the deputy president, they have government slots, and they can actually create problems from within. Okay. So it could be possible that this is a plot to make the president reach out to them and say, okay, I know that bringing my friend Raila Odinga on board has created discomfort, but it doesn't mean that I have cut my ties with you. Yes. It only means we are working together for the big country. But I also understand that politically speaking, one deputy president, William Ruto, would not have a situation where he sees that there is a possibility that in this process, he is going to have a situation in which Raila Odinga probably rebrands himself and then comes out forward. And you can see that Raila Odinga is doing something which a lot of people are not looking at. He is revamping the ODM party across the nation, while the Jubilee party is in a shambles. So if today we were to go to the grassroots and start canvassing for elections, there is a very high chance that the ODM grassroots support would be higher. But most importantly, in Jubilee right now, there has been calls of election. Nothing is happening. We cannot even hold, they cannot even hold a parliamentary group meeting for various reasons. And of course, the DP understands that if the situation remains like this, it is going to be a disadvantage on him. And I believe he's decided, rather than sit and wait, to go to the offensive.
All right. Let's walk away from politics now and discuss issues of interest to Kenyans. And one of them actually is the state of the economy, all right? They're saying it grew last year by 6.3% or thereabout. Some people are actually doubting this figure. They're saying, you're telling us about a growing economy, but we can't see jobs, there are no benefits to it. We can't see tangible benefits, so to speak, from a growing economy. So many Kenyans being laid off, companies closing down. Just yesterday or the day before, we did see tens of thousands of Kenyans turning up at Eka Hotel for 5 positions that were advertised. That should tell you something, at least, David.
I think that there has been, it's a challenging times for the economy globally. So Kenya is not an isolated situation. The global economy has been slowing down a bit, and that has a knock-off effect on almost each and every country. But I also think that we do not lack policies. We lack implementers of those policies so that they work for the country. You see, President Uhuru Kenyatta cannot rely on Raila to effect these policies. He relies on a team of solid cabinet secretaries who he holds accountable as professionals to make and implement policies. Theirs, I bet, would be to just implement policies that have been existing. I do not want to be the judge of how the CS Rotich in charge of Treasury, under whose docket this squarely as sat, has performed. But I bet that we would be in a much better place if we had a more innovative, cabal of leaders around the president. And that's why sometimes I have been, and today I still will be a proponent for a reshuffle. Because if midway things don't seem to be working for you, then it means the team of foot soldiers you have let you down. You must not kick all of them away. You cannot have Matiang'i doing everything for you. He is only but human. He can only go so far. He can only handle so much. The government is so massive, you cannot rest it on the shoulders of one person or Magoha. You need at the very least 7 of those to try and move, especially the drivers of, of the economy, which I bet President Kenyatta has christened as, the Big Four agenda. Because once you fix the manufacturing sector, inevitably, you have created jobs.
Yes.
Once you ensure that we are a food secure nation, the work that goes into making Kenya a food secure nation will have a knock-off effect of creating jobs, because then agriculture becomes big. That agrarian revolution is able to create jobs on its own. And you then ensure that we have a healthy nation, so that these people who are working are not dying because they know there is remedy for it.
Okay, let me just stop you there. Let's go back to Lee Funeral Home, where you see the live pictures there outside the Lee Funeral Home, where the body of Bob Collymore is. And our reporter Sharon Baranga is over there. Sharon, could you just tell us what's happening over there?
Thank you, Edmond. We are at Lee Funeral Home, and the family of the late Chief Executive Officer of Safaricom has just arrived to get his body. We understand today is going to be Bob's final journey from Lee. From here, they are going for another service where they are going to do a cremation. We are yet to the place is yet to be disclosed to the media, but it is a very private ceremony. We have a number of senior managers who just arrived here at the Lee Funeral Home, and the celebrated CEO of Safaricom was suffering from cancer, and he began his treatment in Nairobi before he was referred to a hospital in London. So close to 1 year he has been battling cancer, and he succumbed to the disease in the early hours of Monday, and we also understand that he knew of what was going to happen, and he had already prepared his family. Back to you, Edmond.
Thank you so much, Sharon Baranga, live from the Lee Funeral Home, where the body of the late CEO of Safaricom, Bob Collymore, lies and will be taken from and will be interred in a private ceremony this morning. The family, as we understand, is there, and some of the top managers and directors of the company as well, and some members of the board have arrived there, and so we'll keep you updated on what happens from the Lee Funeral Home and the final bow of the former CEO of Safaricom, Bob Collymore. Let's take our first break on NTV Today this morning. We'll be back with our discussion on the state of the nation. Don't go too far. of the late Bob Collymore and the directors and top managers and members of the board at Safaricom PLC having arrived there, I think, to collect the body of Michael Joseph, I should say Bob Collymore. I keep making that mistake. I apologize for that. Bob Collymore, who died yesterday and will be interred in a private ceremony this morning, or at least sometime this day. He died yesterday morning, and just as you can see on your screen there, and former Safaricom Chief Executive Officer Michael Joseph has been reappointed as the interim CEO of the company, of course, after the death of Bob Collymore. And this is following the passing on of Bob Collymore yesterday. The 67-year-old was the CEO of the Safaricom Limited from July 2000, when the company was relaunched as a joint venture between Vodafone UK and Telkom Kenya until his retirement in November of 2010. Joseph is also a member of Safaricom's board and the current chairman of the national carrier Kenya Airways. He is taking over from the same person he left the company to, who died yesterday, of course. And this is, according to the board, just in the interim as they look for permanent replacement for Bob Collymore, who passed on yesterday, and his remains will be interred today as well. So those are live pictures from the Lee Funeral Home. We'll keep you updated on what's happening there, and at least towards the end of the journey of Bob Collymore, who will be interred later today in a private family and friends, so to speak, ceremony, and members of the Safaricom fraternity as well. So we'll keep those pictures there, just in case of any activity. We've seen, at least it's been cleared. Right now we can't see the people who were there earlier. That might be a sign of something, but we'll get to understand from our reporter Sharon Baranga, who is at Lee Funeral Home there for us. Those are also pictures of Michael Joseph, who's taken over at Safaricom, at least in the interim, as they look for a permanent replacement for Bob Collymore. He is the former CEO of that company, having served until 2010, when he left the company, early 2000 to 2010, when he left the company in the hands of Bob Collymore. He's also a member of the board. Let's come back to our discussion this morning, the state of the nation. And we were talking about the state of the economy. Many people, David, you're making a point there that the global economy is struggling. And that might be a reason as well that our economy here is struggling as well. But many people think that we've invested so much in mega projects and taken in so much of loans, and the debt has sort of ballooned. You know, we are talking about 5.5 trillion shillings right now, much of it, of course, owed to China in external debt, and that Kenyans are paying a huge price for some of these mega projects that we are talking about.
Edmond, I think we all agree that we are debt-burdened and debt-riddled, that our debt levels have gotten to points that they should not have gotten to in the first instance. That is why I question the ability of some of the cabinet secretaries. Rotich is Harvard-read and Harvard-schooled. I thought he would have done better with managing our debt crisis. But is debt entirely a bad thing? Absolutely not. The debt level for even the United States of America is crazy. The problem with this context is that we go seek debt, then that debt is mismanaged. It ends up not doing its intended purpose. It ends up in the pockets of a few, which is what I bet has made President Kenyatta decide, no, we have to get to a point where we have to deal decisively with corruption. We cannot abet it and continue to praise the corrupt. You know, when I watched Lesiampe, to his credit, he was a very good manager at Kenyatta National Hospital before he found himself promoted and messed up himself, now admitting to his people in the village, thinking that you can run away from some of these things that he in fact stole. But hey, look, here comes the next governor for Samburu County. Because we reward, society rewards the corrupt, that the way to the top is through the garden of graft. Debt is not in itself a problem if it is managed right. 5.5 trillion of debt, we should have felt it enormously in our economy. We should have seen it. Of course, exactly. I have seen roads are being done. I have seen quite an infrastructure, infrastructure being done here, there, everywhere. But it is not reflective of a 5.5 trillion debt. Who got us here? President Kenyatta has no financial background. He can only trust his foot soldiers to do what is right. He appointed them thinking they would act in the best interest of the country. We even threw out Aror Kimwarer after swallowing 45 billion. We are here. We moved on. Questions were not asked. We did not trace it to the right persons who perpetrated the offense. That one lost. We will continue losing billions. If you read the Auditor General's report every other day, you would die of depression because of how brazenly, how brazen are thieves we have become. And we are breeding thieves in this society. And it seems that when we go to court, somehow either the case is not argued right, or the person on the other end, as the judge decides that this person is not guilty enough. Yeah. The case of the lady who died, who was smashed and killed, one would only expect that the judge would give the maximum 10 years, punishment in prison. We end up with 3 years, and I'm thinking, is that justice? Would that judge accept or feel that justice has been done if the judge lost, God forbid, her own daughter, and a judge handed only 3 years of imprisonment to the perpetrator of that offense? So I hope we get to a point where we feel that something is being done. President Kenyatta can only do as much as he can as concerns corruption. He can only push as hard as he can. Yeah. He cannot prosecute in court. He has to depend on Haji. He cannot investigate the crime. He can only depend on Kinoti. He cannot be the judge. He can only depend on the judiciary. And so I really, really hope and pray that we make some steps. But the debt crisis in this country is something for us to worry about. It is something for us to worry about. Okay. Then we need to question, where did the money go? And did it achieve its intended purpose?
All right. Just as you were making your point, we had those live pictures from Lee Funeral Home. We believe that is a hearse that is to carry the body of the late Bob Collymore. Joining us this morning as well, we promised you, Gabriel Mudhuma is here. Karibu sana.
Here he is, asante sana.
I understand you're in a meeting. Are you discussing the state of the nation?
Actually, that's what we were doing.
Oh, really?
Actually, that's what we were doing.
Or you're picking part of the...
And I'm actually glad to see Wakili there, Mabule, and my good friend Osiani. No, Osiani is part of government. I think he told you. He's not told you.
No, it doesn't sound like it. He's punching the government right now.
You haven't realized he doesn't bash government as he used to do back in the day.
I think there's
and let him not lie to you about the handshake.
I think we need a correction. Oceani is not part of government. Oceani is now government.
Oh, really?
Oh, he's part of government. He has more voice than... Anyway, first of all, let me send my condolences, which I think everybody has done, to this great man called Bob Collymore.
Yes.
Most of us, I'm actually in the telecom field, and this is somebody who we interacted with many times, and I believe many people who have actually come out to talk about the kind of man he was.
Yes.
There is somebody we really need to not only talk about, but really follow his footsteps.
Exactly.
He's a very great man who we've lost, and I think the lessons that he leaves behind are actually very great examples, and I think these are things we need to be talking about, in months and years to come.
From the testimonies we've heard from everyone who's spoken about him, good things to say. He had this incredible charm about him.
Oh, yes.
He was fun to hang around and stuff like that. And I think I also interviewed him when I was still a sports journalist. I graduated, because Safaricom invested heavily in sports in the country.
Totally.
And you could tell from the conversations his level of integrity.
Totally.
He had no problem cancelling a sponsorship if he felt the money was not being spent in the right manner.
And he did.
He cancelled rugby, suffered football.
Yes.
He said, you know what, I'm not going to give my shareholders money to people who are just embezzling the whole thing, left, right, and centre. So integrity for him was key. And he did play a big part in developing not only the employment profile of the country in terms of what M-Pesa has done and all of that. As he takes a final bow, we can only say, may his soul rest in peace. As you can see, there are also security part of that team that is there to collect the body of Bob Collymore. I think the journalists, it appears, are being chased out of the place, because those shots do tell something, and I think it's about time that they're going to be taking the body, I think, and they do not want us to take live pictures of that because they had said it's going to be a private ceremony when his remains are interred. So I think that's what's happening. The way that camera is held, gentlemen.
And you know, to be fair,
Yes.
I mean, Bob Collymore, the late, you know, and it actually sounds quite, you know, unorthodox calling him the late, but that's just a fact. He lived in the light. He was on the limelight half of the time. And I think when the family now decides, you know, for him to be, you know, buried privately, we all, the best we can do is to actually respect those wishes. And I think, you know, that could actually be part of what we can give back to Bob Collymore and the family. So at this point, I think we just allow the family to mourn him the best way they know how. And everybody, you know, takes a back seat. Of course, you know, after his interment, I know somebody had the chairman of Safaricom, Mr. Nganga, saying that sometime this week, then there will be a ceremony for, you know, people to look back and celebrate his life, which I think many people, I can guarantee many people will show up. But, you know, not to take the flair from what, you know, Bob Collymore believed in, and I'm glad that you've mentioned how, you know, he couldn't hesitate taking away sponsorship away from, you know, places he thought, you know, accountability was not practiced. You know, he reminds me of Warren Buffett, who, you know, moves by the same paradigm shift. He says, I don't give my money to the poor or the rich. I give my money to the deserving. So I think that is also a mantra I think we should be carrying across. Just because you say you don't have money and you have money but you're not deserving, it should not be, you know, it should not be coming to you if you're not deserving. So these are some of the great things that we should be learning from these guys. I mean, he was a man of means, but look at how he lived. He lived a very proper, well, accountable kind of life. And, you know, these are some of the things that we should be amplifying to the youth of this country.
In a documentary yesterday celebrating his life aired on NTV, Larry Madowo, a great friend of his, says that he shaved his own head. You know, because he wanted to save money.
Not really. You know, when you leave, and I think Gabriel has lived in the US. I lived in the UK for a while. When you live in those contexts, it's practice, because the cost of shaving your head in the UK is about 20 to 100 pounds, depending on where you do it. So if it's 100 pounds, that's about 15,000 Kenya shillings. So as a student, you know, the first thing you do, the machine for shaving your hair is 8 pounds. The cost of shaving your head is 20 to 100 pounds. You just get your machine. I still have mine in the house.
But when you came back to Kenya, it's only 200 shillings, 100 bombs.
I also do have mine. And then you have to book an appointment to go get a shave. So you'd rather put away that hassle and do that machine like this.
Have taken me back to, I did my master's in Liverpool as well. And Luciani is very right. For 2.5 years, I never had my head shaved.
You had a fro?
Oh, if I show you my pictures, I almost had dreadlocks. I had almost dreadlocks by graduation day, you know. And, you know, it's because you look at, do I really need to spend this? This is the cost of my...
15,000 shillings, that's a lot of money so it's a lot of money.
That's a good place to go. I had also almost forgotten.
Okay, gentlemen, let's go back to our discussion of the day, State of the Nation. And one of the other things that we've seen happening, you know, is the issue of the stalemate within, and even before we go to that, live pictures again from the Lee Funeral Home. That is the hearse that we expect will carry the body of the late Bob Collymore out of Lee Funeral Home and to where the ceremony, interment ceremony, will be held privately, the family and close friends, and I believe part of the Safaricom family later this day. So we'll keep monitoring that and see what happens, and we'll keep you informed. So those pictures will stay on your screen, sometimes in split, and sometimes as you see them full screen as well, even as we continue with our discussion. The National Assembly at odds, or literally at war with the Senate, and the point of concern here, of contention, Bwana James, is the division of revenue bill. The National Assembly insists they want to give 316 billion shillings. The Senate wants 327 billion shillings, a difference of 11 billion shillings, all right? And this has become so big a problem that we are into at least the first 2 days of the new financial year, and the counties still have yet to know whether they will have money or get money to run the services that they need to do.
I have said it many times, and I will repeat it here, that I think the Senate is comprised of a leadership which has decided to become a crybaby, okay? One of the biggest issues I had with the Senate in the last term was that they were never proactive at all. And I expected that this time round, they would get their act right. And I think the Senate is getting it all wrong. Let me tell you, the Constitution 2010 places the responsibility of deciding how much money goes to the national government and to the counties in the National Assembly. Okay? The Senate would hope that the National Assembly would be well guided to look at the affairs and concerns of counties. That is all good, okay? But once the National Assembly is resolved that it is going to allocate a certain amount of money to the counties, that is it. The Senate can never be heard as saying, of course we must understand that the process of budget making is an elaborate one, in which many players participate, many stakeholders. That budget doesn't appear in Bunge just like that. There is a process that happens. And we expect that the National Assembly should also take care of the interest of counties. However, when the National Assembly has reached a resolution that this is the amount of money it's going to allocate to the counties and national government.
Nyabola, just hold on. I think that is the body now leaving, the house and part of the entourage, and just leaving Lee Funeral Home to wherever the private interment ceremony will be held, and that effectively marks the final bow for the late Bob Collymore, the CEO, now ex-CEO of Safaricom, who died yesterday. So that's the entourage, and led by the house, of course, leaving Lee Funeral Home, part of the family, and some of the leaders of Safaricom, the managers, the directors, and also part of the board who went to Lee Funeral Home to collect the body of the late Bob Collymore, and just leaving right now for their destination where the private interment ceremony will be held. He takes his final bow today, and may his soul rest in peace. Yes.
So I was saying this. Once the National Assembly has determined that this is the amount of money that goes to the national government, and this is the amount of money that goes to counties, that determination is final. Now, the Senate has a unique responsibility. It then determines, out of this allocation for counties, which county is supposed to get what. That is the responsibility given to Senate as per the Constitution. We have seen a situation in which, in most of the cases, the Senate sits somewhere at a corner and keeps throwing tantrums at the way the National Assembly operates. Of course, we have had this discussion before, even here, that there is a committee that is supposed to constitute of the leadership of the Senate and the National Assembly, which is supposed to deal with these things even before they get there. There's supposed to be a speakers committee, for instance, which is also supposed to comprise the members, the leadership of the majority in the National Assembly and Senate, and the minority in both houses. Okay? But this is what I want to say with respect to this particular problem that we have between Senate and the National Assembly. I believe very strongly that the National Assembly and the Senate of this country, now that there is no clear way of determining which of them is superior, should always sit down through the leadership of these two assemblies to determine matters which are important to Kenyans in a better fashion than they are doing. I don't expect, for instance, Duale and my friend Murkomen speaking at each other in press conferences when their offices are just across the corridor in the precincts of Parliament. Is it 8 or 11, whatever. If there is a place that has wasted the money that we give them, okay, that place is the counties, all right? And believe me you, while I'm a strong proponent of devolution, okay, and while I believe strongly that we should do everything to ensure that we assist the devolved units of this country to proceed and grow in the direction we want them to go, I can tell you for sure that, for instance, where I come from, in Nyamira County, and I'm not afraid to say this, about 25 billion Kenya shillings has now, more than, almost 30 billion, has now been devolved to Nyamira County. Just go to Nyamira County and ask yourself where that 25 billion has gone. So even before we say let them get the extra 11 billion, let them account to us what they do with the little money they have been given. In fact, I'm even daring the national government to start living within its means. I should see Rotich reducing our budget from 3 trillion to 2.5 billion if that's what we can raise, okay? Because what is the use of us writing a budget of 3 billion, of 3 trillion, and inside there, the kickback is 1 trillion.
Let me say, before Gabriel speaks, I want to fundamentally disagree with Mamboleo on two issues. One, there is a lacuna in the law. He is a lawyer. And whereas we would say that expressly it is the National Assembly to determine the allocation to the counties, and that's true, the Senate has a bit of its work as the ones in charge of oversighting the counties. If there was no lacuna in the law, then the desire of the National Assembly would long be implemented and that money would have long departed to the counties. But I want to warn the members of the National Assembly. You know, I have made elaborate examples of people who, when they were in different places, thought they would not be the ones in that place. When we were making the constitution of this country, the person who led the team that rubbished the possibility of Senate being the upper house was Kiraitu Marungi. He said the Senate cannot be the upper house. It is useless. It can just be unequal to the National Assembly. And that's how we ended up in this situation where we do not know which house is superior and which one is inferior. In fact, by order of how the speakers of those two houses address the public, the person who is given the more prominent role is the Speaker of the National Assembly, making it look like it is the superior house. What ended up happening to Kiraitu Morongi is that when he ran for office, he was told you can't become an MP, and he didn't want to be a villager and couldn't become governor. He ended up becoming a senator.
The first time.
When the Minister for Devolution, Anna Waiguru, was the CS for devolution, Anne did not even dignify the governors. She did not even pay a courtesy call on one governor, not even the Nairobi governor then. And she was the one saying how they cannot give money to counties. They are being wasteful. Where is Anne Waiguru now? She's a governor. The members of parliament today who are making this noise will find themselves in either of two places, either as governors needing that amount, or senators who want to have a say on what goes to the counties. But insofar as devolution is, I totally agree, because one of the things for which I am passionate is devolution, having been under the tutelage of the doyen of devolution, Raila Odinga. And it is true that governors have been very wasteful. They have been absolutely corrupt. But that, to make that blanket assumption and assertion, disadvantages people like the Makueni governor, Professor Kivutha Kibwana, who has done absolutely great for the people of Makueni with the little he has. So are we saying that people like Kibwana are going to be thrown to that corner of not being given sufficient resources or additional resources just because someone is wasteful like Nyagarama is in Nyamira, as my brother Mamboleo says, in Nyamira? It's not right. And devolution is a new concept. We must agree that this is just but the second
Need
time.
I say those allegations?
What I want is that we must be able to have institutional frameworks that ensure that the corrupt are punished. We must see that every governor who is unable to account to the last dot the monies entrusted in his care as a governor for a particular county is held to account, is prosecuted, he is jailed, so that we do not kill devolution. Listen, one would argue that if we refuse to devolve the extra 11 billion and kept it in the national government, are we sure that it will be safe? With all these vultures,
let me introduce
it can be very impossible.
Something small.
Okay, hold on.
Something very small.
Yes.
Look at Article 95 of the Constitution. Article 95(4), and look at the roles of the National Assembly.
Please
let
read
me
it
tell
for
you
us,
something. Let me tell you something. Who decides which money goes where is very clear in the Constitution. And by extension, if you look at the roles of the National Assembly and the Senate, you will see that by function, definitely the National Assembly is the superior house. Now, with regards to the contradiction in terms that you will see when you find someone who was now National Assembly member becoming a senator or governor, those are things that they now know. When you run for Senate, you now know what to expect. But most importantly, let us underscore one point. Even as governors are agitating for more and more money, remember, there is not any institution or any function of government that is getting as much money as they are looking for, okay? We must understand that this money is scarce. It is limited. So we don't expect that anyone in government, at whatever level, is going to get exactly the amount of money they need to be comfortable. You have counties which are not accounting properly for the revenues they collect locally at home, or who have refused to put in place mechanisms to collect revenue locally properly as they should. But then, a disclaimer, I did not mention any names. With respect, with respect to any governor, I just
those are allegations you cannot substantiate right now.
Absolutely.
If you are held liable, we'll point fingers at Osiani.
Can I shock you? In May, when chips started falling that the Senate would want to increase the allocation in the counties, and you could tell. I knew there was going to be a flare-up because the MPs, and I'm totally agreeing with what Osiani is saying. The fact that you're fighting for these, the MPs rather, that you're fighting for these allocations not to come to counties does not guarantee that they are going to be put into proper use. The amount notwithstanding, and this is something that I've seen, and I've really tried studying. If these guys just want to reduce it from 314 billion to 310, and the Senate want to increase it by 11 billion, my major concern, analytically, or as somebody who is or studying governance, would be where is that money going? What structures have been set up to ensure that that money is not lost? And I think most of these counties, and we agree for the longest, they have not put mechanisms to ensure that money is well utilized and well accounted for. That just the other day, they were actually almost all governors, when they were told about IFMIS, everybody was like, no. Up until very recent, the city of Nairobi was actually running an Excel spreadsheet. Right? So you're talking about people who know what should be done, but they are not doing. But coming to the MPs, and this is one thing I like about them, because really, let me tell you, what they are doing is really painting a very darn picture to the governors, yet even they themselves. Pick an MP today from the streets of Nairobi, ask them, can you account for me how you use your CDF? They would duck.
Which constitution?
So I go back to what Osiani said, and he actually put it very well. Here we are not talking about the allocation, we're talking about the how. Because you as an MP, you first cannot prove to me how you've used your CDF. So it really matters what office you occupy. And Matt Osiani, that's the tragedy of our governance today. It is the office that you occupy. You want to make as much noise as possible, not knowing that in the next election year, you could actually find yourself in the Senate or the gubernatorial seat. And I remember very well, when guys were yapping all across town. No, governors should not they should not be given money. How will they account for it? No. They are governors today.
They are governors today.
The song has changed. In fact, even at one point, when we were talking about the 15%, you remember? And on this one, Raila was saying, counties should get 45%. But many people were so against it. It was 15%. But now, the same people cannot keep the noises down.
Nyabola,
we need more allocation.
Hold on. Just hold on.
And Muduma are going to run for governor.
Hold on. Live pictures are there of the funeral procession at Forest Road heading to Karioko. The interment will be through cremation. We understand, and those are the live pictures. As you can see there, our camera person and the reporter following that procession heading to Karioko, where the body of the late Bob Kolimo will be cremated in that private ceremony. And we'll tell you what happens. And let's just see how far we can go, because we were told this is going to be private, and at some point we believe our team there will not be let in wherever that is going to be. And for as long as we can get the pictures,
but
let's have a look at that.
I mean, just to, cremation is usually very private. I doubt it's really open.
No, I mean, you can't show pictures of the process.
Yeah, exactly.
To that extent, it is private.
So
And,
we just
even,
want
and
to
even
know
your
how
media
private
houses
is
now,
private.
at least I give kudos to them. I think they've mastered not to show gory
We have
images from
always
time to
mastered
time.
how this is covered.
I like that.
Let me get back to this devolution
But Nyabola,
with the example.
Christian, with tremendous respect, there is something we know for sure now. You know, it's not many times that you are sure about anything. But there is something we are sure about now.
Spill it.
Gabriel Mutu and David Ocean are running for governor 2022. The only thing we don't know is where. They can tell us.
The person who started this governor whole issue was of how mismanagement of resources are happening in Nyamira, who only may end up becoming one because he feels the monies are being wasted. Is my brother Mamboleo. But that said,
And I think
this is what I will
actually.
propose. I think we need to have a way in which we compel governors to be accountable. The Commission on Revenue Allocation should, for example, say that every county that will be accountable to the last coin, as Nyandarua and Makueni have been, I mean, I don't know how real that research was, have demonstrated will get 10% more allocation in the following year. Counties, however, that will not be able to account for the resources given them will have a reduction by the same percentage, so that then these governors will know that my action today informs the allocation I get tomorrow from my first year in office. Until we have that, if we're going to have money just thrown and you know, spilled everywhere at everyone, including those who are busy building skyscrapers in Thailand at the expense of their electorate and the citizens that they should be watching over, then that will mean nothing.
Ocean is always
But I also believe that if at all we are ever going to have a referendum in this country, you know, I hear people talking about referendum. These are the issues we should be talking about fixing.
So the
in that
governors
referendum.
actually are saying they won't support it if the allocation is not 45%.
No, the referendum, before Gabriel goes on, the referendum should address the question, what will be the upper house and the lower house? If not, you scrap off the Senate. If you feel you do not need it.
Why not
But
the
so long
National
as you
Assembly?
think you need it, you should let it be a replica of the House of Lords or the Senate as is in the US, because we borrowed quite heavily from the American context in doing our constitution.
You respond, because some of the counties have not read. In fact, may I say all of them? have
Almost
not read
all
their
of them.
budgets, all right? Because they don't know what amounts they're planning for anyway. And this actually just goes to speak to what this stalemate is actually, you know, causing some of the people. Because now services are not being rendered.
No. You see,
Services are not being rendered.
in an ideal,
And it's
in an ideal devolution structure, this is how I envisioned it. And you know, Osiani has again alluded to the fact that we borrowed heavily from the American structure of governance, which is also quite true. How I envisioned it, and this is how it works in a modest governance structure. You sit down with your county officials and draw up a budget and say, this is the amount of money we are looking for. But majority of it, or this, I mean, give us a structure of how much money you're going to raise as own source revenue. Now, this is something most governors run away from because they are always expecting from the national government. And this is a flaw in the system. And I was telling people, I think it was in this broadcast, sometime I told you, if we continue with this equation, we will not have counties in the next 10, 20 years. Because a county must first produce or have a way to bring about their own source revenue. Once it comes out, you say, this is the deficit that we'll have, and this is the deficit we expect from the national government. And factually introducing that, you say, okay, a county like Nairobi will require an additional 4 billion from the national government. A county like Machakos will require 10 billion. And you structure things like that, following a budget that you... Now, if you cannot even draw up a budget, if you cannot balance your books, really, and you're asking us to give you another 20 billion, in that 20 billion, you're talking about taking care of evolved functions like healthcare. What are we to trust you in? Because we know very well, if you cannot drum up the list which is coming up with the budget, and we expect you to have people who can help you draw such things, how else will you improve the livelihood of Wanjiko? And yet, you are saying about running wards, which are actually the smallest unit of devolution. And that's why you see governors instead of becoming good or getting deep core into governance, the first thing they start by doing is paying off MCAs because they want to run away from accountability. And the minute you start doing that, you are lost because nobody will ever hold you accountable. And by the way, even before you reach Senate, I would have expected by now MCAs to be holding governors seriously accountable.
And citizens holding MCAs
Yeah.
accountable.
But they also have interests. I mean,
me
they
tell
want
you
to go
about-
to benchmarking trips. And
You see, now that is the problem.
MCS can't. Let me tell you something. In this debate about Senate versus National Assembly, after the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, most members of Parliament, especially those who had served for a while, in their mind, without necessarily reading the Constitution appropriately, thought that the Senate was going to be the superior house.
Yes.
And so the most accomplished members of Parliament today, you will find
Yes,
to be in the Senate,
Yes.
okay? And in 2013, they did not understand the greatness of the office of governor at home. Most of them wanted to live in Nairobi. They didn't want to live in Nyamira. And so because of that, they thought that the governor is the equivalent of the local mayor, okay? And left those positions to some fellows who they thought would stay at home as they do their business in Nairobi. Now, woe unto them, because just shortly later, they realized that this guy is actually the head of a serious government back in the village. Yes. He can even determine not to maram your own road, okay? Now, having realized that, you can now see that there is a beeline towards governorship from members of parliament at the National Assembly and Senate and everywhere, okay?
Yes.
So the most coveted position today on earth amongst these members of parliament, other than the presidency, is governor. Now, there are two versions, in my view, of the model of devolution, okay? Where you have a very corrupt national government, centrist government which does not look out for the interests of the outlying areas, okay? Where you have a government which decides to suffocate certain sections of the country of development money and so on, it is good if you devolve governance, even though those governors would be corrupt, because at least you are devolving that corruption even to the counties, as opposed to putting it in one place. But where you have a good national government, okay, you have to have a proper system of governance in the villages which runs the model of devolution. That we are lacking.
All right, James, just hold on. Live pictures there from Karioko. This, I believe, is the farthest we can go. Thanks to Gabriel and his non-belief in journalists.
No, I believe in you guys. I believe in you guys.
This is where the ceremony will be held, and this has to be the farthest we can go as a journalist. So those are the live pictures of where the private ceremony will be held, the cremation of the body of the late Bob Collymore, who died yesterday, the ex-CEO of Safaricom. The former CEO, Michael Joseph, has since taken over, at least in the interim, as the board appoints a permanent replacement for Bob Collymore, a man remembered for so many things, you know, for transforming the telco industry in Kenya and creating opportunities and jobs for many people through very many innovations in the tech industry. And as he takes his final bow, we say, may you rest in peace, Bob. All right.
Nyabola,
Let me
tell you.
You're not done.
By the way, Osiani and Gabriel should not be in a hurry to run for governor, because you see, they have just mentioned mentioned the referendum. Governors are currently pushing for removal of term limits, so that they can come back yet again.
If Nyagarama wants to run again,
if he wants to run, he can run. Can I tell you something, Nyabola? And let this be understood. Where you have a very corrupt central government in a country like Kenya, a developing world, if this country was not progressive like it is today, as I know it, you have a system in which the national government decides it's not going to take development money, for instance, to Nyamira, okay? Then, even if those governors were corrupt, we could say, for whatever little they can do there, it is fine, all right? But where you have a progressive nation like the Republic of Kenya, which was almost winning the game last night, you need to have proper systems of accountability. Look at how they employ. Look at how they employ the chief executive committee at the county. Look at how they employ chief officers, the entire bureaucracy of the county governments. Look at how they expend monies given to them. And I will mention something extremely important because I've even litigated on it in the courts. Section 45 of the Public Finance Management Act allows county governments to spend money from the allocation they have been given and then to do a supplementary budget later to rectify whatever spending that they have done. Let's say, for instance, they had done a budget in June indicating that they will spend 2 billion shillings in health. That by the time they are getting to around March, if they realize that there is probably 500 million remaining in the health budget and they have run out on money on the administrative vote head, they can get 300 million from the health docket and spend it in the administration docket and then do a supplementary budget to rectify that scenario. Now, that has been one of the biggest loopholes in counties wasting public money like never before. Believe me, with respect to the national government can never spend money unless it has been appropriated by the National Assembly, right? But we have a scenario in which county governments can actually hide money in some vote, knowing that towards the end of this term, we will be able to spend this money and then that's how you see votes like peace in the Sudan, and so other places, and so on. So let me tell you something.
That was an issue with difference.
Let me tell you. Some like Gabe who want to run for governor will tell you it was an issue with the system. Okay, that is in many cases a way. That is in many cases a way of hiding money that you later want to withdraw without anyone asking you where that money is gone. Let me tell you.
All right. But James, I think you've made your point. You've made your point.
You see, when I told you the biggest responsibility lies in these two offices. In fact, even before you hit on the governors, the member of county assemblies and the Senate. When you're telling us things like, entries like those South Sudan and State House and things like those, those should have been captured through the county assembly. They should not even have a heat Senate. And then when you also talk about senators being in Nairobi, living in Nairobi, then those are people who don't know their jobs. They are even supposed to be part of the decision-making, the budget decision-making process. That's the work of a senator. They need to question and interrogate that budget. The MCAs
within the county assembly.
Yes, the MCAs, that is their work. They are representing you. They are representing Wanjiko. So when some senator or some MP or some governor talks about Wanjiko, the person who should be talking about Wanjiko every day is a member of a county assembly. So the question we should be asking is, what should we find, or what kind of characteristics must we employ when we are looking for members of county assembly? And you may recall the former Chief Justice, Willie Mutunga, you may recall when he told lawyers, he said, if you want to make change in devolution, go for the post of MCAs. Many people didn't know what he was talking about, but there's something that he had seen. That is where you make a lot of change. Because if you are not induced monetarily, and you have a very core county assembly, you can do wonders. You cannot be bought by the governors. You can subject him to almost each and every accountable ruling. And I think that is where that's where the plot
these days.
But I think
they line up every Friday. Every Friday,
For a token.
they line up at the governor's appointed place.
Just like MPs do.
for a weekend remuneration.
They get per diem and airtime.
Hold on. I think that discussion on the National Assembly and the Senate should be brought to a close. But before we do that, let's go to Karioko, where Sharon Baranga is at the gate of where the private ceremony will be held, the cremation of the body of the late Bob Colimo. Sharon Baranga is there for us. Sharon, how has the journey been from Lee Funeral Home to where you are? We think Okay,
of
all right.
Safaricom
There she is.
just brought here at Karioko. Only people whose name appears on the invited list are let inside. Right now you have to verify your name is on the list before you are allowed inside the premises. It all started from Lee Funeral Home, where his colleagues and family were there to pick the body funeral home, finally bring it here at Karioko, where they're going to have his last respect. I understand that he's going to be cremated here at the fence. And the fence, right now, no one else is allowed inside, only the invited people, the family, and some of his colleagues, most of them top senior managers from Safaricom.
Thank you, Sharon Baranga. Those are live pictures from Karioko in Nairobi, where the body of the late Bob Collymore will be interred this morning. And as you can see there, some of the members of the public have also arrived there, but as Sharon says, they won't be allowed in, and this being a private ceremony, that is the farthest that they can go. Gentlemen, we are about to wrap up.
You know, I really wish that our governors or political class from Bob Collymore, you know, a man who presided over a multi-billion corporation, but who was not given to largesse or grandeur. A man who has decided to humbly be interred, you know, and cremated at Kariako, when in fact, I watched some of his interviews, he had an option of going and paying maybe £4,500 to be interred in the UK. He thought that was not meaningful. There are lessons that can only be taught to us in moments of departure as this. And I hope that while we mourn this corporate titan, Edmond, we pick the invaluable lessons on the necessity of humility and the place of humility in humanness. Without learning that, we may talk all we care. Bob's death, Bob's final, you know, rites is a massive lesson. Even his own life was a life worth learning from. But sadly, we do not. But that said, I hope, back to our topic as we finish, I just hope that the Senate can still fight for its place. If we do not have a referendum, they must just fight for their place. I don't want, and I wish that the National Assembly will not be entirely dismissive of what the Senate is trying to propose. They should sit down and agree that what is it? They should see sense in each other's request. What are we asking? It's not about Duale and Murkomen. No, it should be far beyond and above that. They ought to reason and ask, this 11 billion, dear senators, why are you proposing for this increase? What exactly will it do? Because there are duties that the Senate has that may end up frustrating those of the National Assembly later on. And you don't want this constant stalemate from time to time. So the senators should rise up and understand that beyond their mandate, there is also a place for them to try and reason out. And the National Assembly should not be arrogant in doing this. They should know, as I started by saying, that they themselves will find them place. I remember when Boni Halwale was a member of parliament. Boni stood on the floor of the National Assembly saying, governors, we are not going to allow them to be unnecessarily powerful. They can't even fly flags. Who are they? Then Boni, in his wisdom or lack thereof, ended up running for governor. Okay? So this thing, what goes around comes around. Every time as you make laws, Edmond, you must always envisage a situation in which that law is in the hands of your enemy and that he has now to determine your fate. So I just hope, you know, the history is replete with examples. I hope that they find a solution to this crisis. And while at that, the governors will continuously be accountable. And CRA should find a way of punishing governors who are not accountable if the citizens can't hold them accountable.
I'll count that as your final comment.
I'll say two things very
One
quickly.
minute.
I'll say two things very quickly. One is to actually agree with, again, what Osiani has said. And this really deals with these two houses not agreeing. The 11 billion notwithstanding, accountability notwithstanding, transparency notwithstanding, what I would like to see is people sitting down and saying, hang on a minute, before we say cut and a half, where the allocations that really matter. When you look at some of the devolved functions, like healthcare, I'm really so concerned about the healthcare right now, because the last thing we wanted to do is to start seeing doctors not paid, people starting dying in our county hospitals. I think that's going to be a tragedy. Just because two people somewhere in Nairobi are arguing back and forth. I don't think that's right. Hold these people to account, ask them, like Osiani, interrogate them why they need it, and you know, instead of having a stalemate, at least let's start seeing some, you know, release of funds into the counties. So, and again, like I said, accountability and transparency notwithstanding, that is something that must come up. My last point, I think, with what my good friend Wakili said, is that, yes, when the referendum comes, if one happens, then the governors are actually looking to, you know, to continue or have a limitless term. To me, number one, that's a tragedy, because I really, and I've been praying, Edmond, at some point, we come to terms with what I call the Mandela moment, all right? The Mandela moment is the man who comes out of prison when everybody in the world is watching. And if he wanted to become the life president of South Africa, the whole world would have understood. Yes. He had paid for it. And guess what that man does? He serves for one term. And not only that, he teaches that. And this is something actually edified by somebody like Bob Collymore again, yes, that the existence, what matters in life, is not the longevity, but the credibility of that life
that you leave behind. Thank you so much. 45 seconds, Bwana Mamboleo. You are a man of very many words.
I am a man of very few words, and this is what I have to say. I think the budget we draw every year as a country is way, way beyond our means. And I believe that this year I would have expected the CS for Treasury and National Planning to reduce it to manageable levels. And I expect that the one place also where we could have reduced it is in the counties. Okay. And so I do not understand why this hula-baloo about 11 billion or whatever other billions that anyone is talking about. The money we have as a nation that we can spend is simply not enough for everyone's greed, period.
Right. Not when the Minister for Finance himself wears a boutonniere of a rose flower that should not be in the budget. So we should leave by example.
He bought it.
After all, we have serious things to deal with.
Thank you so much. All right, hold on. All right, okay. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. National team Harambee Stars yesterday tried, and they lost 3-0 to Senegal. I think, in the words of JJ Okocha, it was so good they named him twice. He said
we are not out yet.
that, yes, mathematically we still have a chance. Let's wait and see. Ability is still greater than ambition, he said. Thank you so much. Gabriel Muduma, governance expert, David Osiany, public policy expert, and James Mamboleo, an advocate of the High Court. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning, and thank you so much for being with us for the last 2 hours, even as we saw pictures there of the late Bob Collymore being taken to Karioko, where the body will be interred in a private ceremony. Thank you so much for making time for us and participating in this conversation. I believe you did by watching and maybe sending in comments, and we appreciate you for that. My name is Edmond Nyabola. I step out. NTV Sasa begins in a short while. Don't go too far.